Welcome back, everyone. This is the Hoops Nerd channel. I'm excited today. I'm with Andy Larsen of the Salt Lake Tribune. Thank you, Andy, for coming on. I'm excited about this. We did this a year ago, and this is my favorite time of year. We did.
It's always fun to just chat ball this time of year, right? Like that's totally kind of what's going on. Sometimes it turns out there are wider consequences to the ball chat as well.
I was going to say, I saw you got aggregated. It kind of made me laugh. You tweeted about, well, I got aggregated today, and I just DM'd you. I was like, do you want to come on and just talk about that? But thank you for coming on. I know some of the Twitter world and social media world we live in is crazy with the Dunk Centrals and the Legion Hoops and then some of these other guys on there that, I'll be honest, I don't even know who these guys are. They're not even reporters, but they'll like tweet things as if they're a reporter. And I don't know. I guess I'm just curious. Okay, I'm just going to be completely honest here. I thought it was so funny that Legion Hoops, like they aggregated you, but then they gave a hat tip to this Evan Sidery guy, and I just thought, like, why are you hat tipping him?
It's telephone, right? Like, so some people tweeted or credited me, some people credited the Locked On Jazz podcast, and then some people credited Art, because I think Art was the first Jazz fan to like turn what I've said on the Locked On Jazz podcast into a tweet that was like, Andy Larsen said this. And then, all that Mavs, which I think is that the SB Nation Mavs blog? Or maybe it's fan-sided. I don't know which one. Sorry.
I'm not sure. Oh, no, that must be fan-sided.
Okay. Regardless, then they saw Art's tweet about Colin Sexton in Dallas, and then now it's coming from all that Mavs, and then NBA Central gets it, and it's just like layered and layered, and it is just a game of telephone, right? And so, like, by the time Legion Hoops tweets out, like, at, 3:00 today, whatever it was, it's like, the Sixers are considering trading Paul George to the Jazz, and it's like, well, okay, that's not like what we were doing.
Breaking news, yeah. And it's just some comment was made on it's just crazy to me. And all of these guys want to be so fast because they want to get We live in a crazy world. I'll just be honest. All right, well, I'm excited to have you on because I have some questions, and some of these, you may not know a lot. I know we were talking a little bit before. I was going to ask you about Austin Ainge, but it sounds like you have just not had a lot of connection there yet and don't have a ton of opinion on him. But I guess I do just want to get your perspective on that GM change. Like, I'll be honest, as a more radical Jazz fan that enjoys things like tanking, it filled me with a little bit of dread. Like, are we going to turn into the Sacramento Kings and go trade to the Spurs and get De'Aaron Fox or something like that? Or, then I hear Austin Ainge talk, and it feels very similar to what we've heard from Danny. I don't know. What's your perspective on that whole addition of Austin Ainge?
Yeah, I think it came as a surprise, first of all. We knew that there were being changes made in the front office, but I didn't expect them to be at the president of basketball operations level, right? Like, I expected either, kind of the Danny Justin reign to basically continue with new or different kind of talent evaluators, or just kind of additive talent evaluators hired, rather than inserting Austin Ainge on top as Pobo, right? So, like a lot of other people that weekend, like, I was surprised when that news came out on that Monday, and then I was actually out of town. I was in New York, so I wasn't able to attend that press conference, and so kind of didn't have the chance to meet Austin and in that space. So that's I've got time to catch up, and I hope to like meet him and learn kind of more about what those things are. I mean, I'll tell you this, like, I've had conversations where the understanding is not like this is a wildly different shift in how the team is thinking about where it is, right? Like, but I do think like there is some recognition or some concern about how they felt last season was more damaging than they expected. And then obviously they didn't get the return they expected and just getting the number 5 pick. So I think that's changed some thinking within the front office, maybe not to like go all out for it. Not that I don't think anyone's fooling themselves thinking they're like one piece away, but I do think like having a new person in charge and then having this really, I think, interesting experience where like, yes, the number 5 pick was always the most likely possibility, but I don't know that they saw it in that way. There was always that hope, right? Like, and when the worst case scenario happened, I think it was legitimately kind of shocking and damaging to a lot of people in the organization, especially at the ownership level.
Okay. Yeah, because I mean, and that's just human nature. You're going to lean towards the thing that you want. And if it's a 50-50, of course you're going to be like, oh, we're going to get a top 4 pick. It did not work out that way. I guess I thought one of the things that was interesting about that, because Ryan Smith, I can't remember if it was in an article or in a podcast or whatever. I think it might have been Zach Lowe talking about, I can't remember, but apparently Danny was out of country at the time. And like, I guess the hire was made. Did Danny Ainge know about that at all? Or was he just completely blindsided?
The story is that, and this was said in the press conference, that Ryan, kind of made the decision and then called Austin and was like, hey, or called Danny and was like, hey, we've decided to hire Austin. And yeah, Danny was not kind of involved in that decision. I am a little skeptical of the story. I mean, maybe that's true. I truly don't know. It seems really, I mean, that sounds crazy, right? Like that if you were talking
like a little Game of Thronesy, to be honest. Like
you have the CEO of Jazz basketball is Danny Ainge, who moved home to be with his family more, and here is his literal son, a son that he left to go hang out with more of his family back here in Utah. But then they're not going to talk about, hey, the idea like, hey, the Jazz might hire me as not just a guy, but as president of basketball operations. It's hard for me to really buy that tale. I don't know if it's true or not. I don't. It just seems, it doesn't make sense given the situation, I guess, from my point of view anyway.
Yeah, I guess I have a hard, yeah. And what happened to me is because sometimes I gotta learn and grow up. I'm 41 and I'm still letting myself get emotional over things that I see on a dumb social media. But everyone was like, tanking is over, because that was the big thing that they talked about, and that was the big headline. And I think Austin Ainge said, after a very long question from the ESPN 700, I forgot, O'Connell, I can't. Yeah. And he says, like, to put it easy, are the Jazz done tanking or manipulating lineups so they lose games? And he says, you won't see that next year. Right. And of course, I got like the dread of that. I was like, I can't believe that we're going to like try to do this too quickly. But then I thought, after I slept on it, I just thought, you know what? If there might have been a real gap here that the Jazz did need to fill, and Ryan Smith might have really, I mean, no one's going to know better than Ryan Smith what need they have. That's one perspective I had. And I thought, after being in Boston for 14 years with Danny Ainge, I assume that there's some shared views and understanding of how to build a championship team. And I think one of those is that you just have to have, if you want to win a championship, you need a guy that's at least considered a top 10 guy. And whether you get that in the draft or trade, like we have 2 teams in the finals right now that did not draft their best guy. They found them through a trade. Anyways, I don't know what the question is for that. With that, is that kind of you're kind of?
I think it's interesting. Like, to my knowledge, they didn't do like a Pobo search, right? Like, and that scares me a little. Like, or at least I think that's maybe an opportunity missed, right? Like, you had the chance to talk to some of the better talent evaluators in the league about where you are as a franchise, and maybe, hire one of them to be your president of basketball operations. If you just chose Austin Ainge because of your familiarity with him in Boston, and because, frankly, let's be real here, nepotism is a thing that is happening here. Like, I am a little bit concerned about that. Now, like, everyone tells me Austin Ainge is great and I think has a good resume, and the Boston Celtics are very successful. But you did have a general manager in-house, and you chose to hire an assistant GM over the top of him, right? Like, so I do think, like, you have to kind of evaluate it on those terms a little bit. And ultimately, like, what it's going to be evaluated on is how the rebuild works out, right? Like, if this doesn't work and if the Jazz are in a rough place 5 years from now, then there's going to be a lot of jokes about the nepotism in the Utah Jazz, more than there even are now, right? Like, and if it does work out, then all of a sudden, yeah, this is a family business and everyone's working together and it's a genius move, right? Like, so we'll see, right? Like, I truly don't know. I think, everyone says Austin's a smart guy and understand and is a good talent evaluator. So you want that. And I do think that was lacking in the Jazz organization a little bit, as someone whose specialty was talent evaluation. Like, I think it is for Austin. But how this works out is really TBD. And I think we'll learn a lot about like his preferences and tendencies over the course of this offseason.
Yeah. And I had heard through some things, through some people I know, that like, I think at least under Danny, well, actually, before I ask that, do you, and he's not going to say anything, but it's just, if I'm Justin Zanik, I'd be like, what the heck? Or maybe Justin Zanik doesn't care. Maybe he's happy where he's at. I don't know. Do you have any sense of that?
I like publicly and privately, he's saying all the right things, right? Like he is, and always has, even when they hired Danny over the top of him again, right? Like, said, hey, this is additive to our team. We're just all trying to swim in the same direction, like all that kind of stuff. And yet, like, it's human nature. That's got to be a frustrating moment. And, he did want to run a team. He was in line to run the Milwaukee Bucks before then. He got pushed, kind of, again, picked over for that job with John Horst. Then came back to Utah and got back to a good situation with Dennis and Justin. But like, I think it's got to have been frustrating, right? I know, again, he said all the right things and it makes sense. And I do think like there is a world in which Justin is with the Jazz long term, but I also understand that if he got a better offer elsewhere to be higher up in an organization, right now he's a number 3, right? And so what does that mean, for his real influence? I think is a question mark. And that, again, we don't really know. Like, previously Justin was the day-to-day guy, right? Like that was kind of how things, he was actually managerially in charge of all of these people. Now, like that org chart is less clear to me, and I think a lot of people. So we'll see how it goes. I think there are some Justin Zanik people in the organization who probably feel less comfortable than they did prior to this, right? Like, so we'll see again what further changes are made as a result.
Okay. Well, thank you for going into that, because I have one other. Okay. What do you know about Ryan Smith and lottery night? It was like, honestly, so painful for all of us. It was just, it's a punch in the gut. I was a little worried when he goes and gets Austin Ainge, like, I'm sick of this. I'm hiring a guy that's going to do what I say. Or is it more he was just like frustrated? And then I saw a tweet from him a few days later where he like kind of had this sentiment of like, you know what, pick yourself up and keep going. I don't know. What is your sense of kind of where he's at and what he's thinking at this point?
So, I was in the lottery room, right, in Chicago where they
that's right. Wait, can I ask you, can we put this to bed? It's not rigged.
No, I tweeted that it wasn't rigged, and I believe that it wasn't rigged. I wrote an article that it wasn't rigged. Like, I'm watching it, and then the classic reply is like, well, like magicians exist, and like you can do magic tricks on a stage, right? Like, which is true, right? Like, hey, maybe they're doing some sleight of hand that like every NBA GM and every media member there can't see, and the Ernst & Young is in on it too, and maybe, but it just seems pretty unlikely.
It just was like bad luck. I'm sorry, guys. And what made me so mad that night is like the most conspiracy theory friendly thing happened. It's so annoying because then like the people can just, I don't know. Anyways, thanks for answering that.
Well, I don't get why. There are a lot of things I don't understand about that, but like then how would how does Anthony Davis buy into this scheme, right? To get, because right, in order to trade Luka Doncic to the Lakers, the NBA guaranteed the Dallas Mavericks the number 1 overall pick. Well, how did they know to have Anthony Davis and Kyrie Irving go down so they wouldn't make the playoffs?
Exactly.
It doesn't make sense as a conspiracy. It's just it's it was absolutely the worst outcome, right? Like everyone in the league, everyone in that room just groaned and was like, "Oh my god! Like I can't believe that those guys got it." Like everyone was super disappointed and pretty mad about it, except obviously the Dallas representative. I guess there's only one, but yeah, it was a weird thing for sure.
Yeah, and so I guess sorry, I cut you off, but that conspiracy theory stuff drives me crazy because I'm just like, guys, this is just not. Anyways, so back to like Ryan Smith. Was he in the lottery room with you?
No, Justin Zanik was the Jazz's lottery representative. So I guess the kind of only Jazz world people was Justin Zanik, me, Sarah Todd, right?
Oh, okay.
And so we're in the room watching it happens. Then you wait for the draft show to happen, right? And so as soon as the show is over, then you sprint out of the lottery room and literally kind of run or jog up to where the TV studio is, which is this big ballroom in a conference center, right? And as I walk in, Ryan Smith and his family are kind of walking out. And it's clear, like Ryan looks at me and is just like, I don't know, some combination of pissed and devastated and lost, like just doesn't have anything to say. And then kind of go on. We're looking for Jazz PR director Derek Garduno to kind of do some interviews with Jay-Z afterwards and kind of ask about kind of what's happening, right? So we run into Danny Ainge, we run into Will Hardy. Will Hardy declines to do an interview, which is obviously his purview. And Danny the same, and we end up talking to Justin and get his comments on the record. But yeah, like it was, I mean, everyone had thought this whole year, like, hey, this will be worth it if one or two things happen, right? And the things didn't happen. And then all of a sudden it's like, well, we got to rebuild this team with Trey Johnson or whatever, right? So that's it is obviously a hugely disappointing thing because Cooper Flagg does change the trajectory of the franchise immediately.
Mm-hmm. Well, and maybe that's a good transition. I will say, sorry, one other thing. It's Zach Lowe was talking about it, and I'm sure he's talking to someone in the Jazz front office or ownership, but just talking about what was the point. I mean, obviously Ryan Smith comes across to me as the one that was the most devastated because I think Ryan Smith, from everything I've ever heard, is very much not a fan of losing games to go after the pick. I think he would much prefer kind of going for a big trade, and maybe I'm wrong. If I'm wrong, let me know. But I think I guess Will Hardy declines an interview. Is he pretty devastated by this stuff, or is he more like, you know what, I'm just going to go coach and who's on the team is who on the team?
Too, like I would say, like was less. I don't know. It's hard because like Ryan was there in the room and he put his wife on the stage, right? Like he put Ashley on stage, and like that's got to be it's not her fault, obviously, but it's got to be like a little bit of an embarrassing moment to have like that disappointment be in your family on stage for everyone to see, right? Like,
yeah.
And so I think that was much more visceral for Ryan, and like Will cares a lot. Like Will was not happy. Will was Will more than anyone was kind of a victim of this, right? Like the front office kind of just, I don't know if victim's the right word, right? Like he makes millions of dollars, whatever, but like he would like to coach as hard as he can. And all year long, he was doing bad rotations and sitting guys out and really coaching suboptimally in order to lose as many games as possible, right? And so, yes, like he was mad about what happened for sure. I think the decline to give a comment thing was, part of it's not his place, but also part like, and I'm not going to be proud of what I say on the record, if he did say it. So, I'm not going to read Will's brain on that. I don't know for sure, but that's got to be part of what's going on there for sure.
Well, and kind of, okay, now I'm going to transition. That whole thing was fascinating to me, and thank you for answering that. I want to ask, so they say they're going to play to win games, which I actually agree. I do feel like the Jazz did themselves a little bit of a disservice last season where they're on there's like two teams playing at the same time. They've got Colin Sexton and Jordan Clarkson and John Collins and Lauri Markkanen, and then they've got all these young prospects that they've drafted. And I mean, they're saying they're like adjusting lineups to lose games, but that means you're playing the young players to lose. I don't know if that's a message that they love to hear. And I know like that those older, I know for a fact, like John Collins would love to get traded to like,
Well,
I know he has a house in Miami and he would love to be traded in Miami. That's not like, I don't know. I don't know if that's crazy.
John's more of a more loyal on that than you would expect. Like, honestly, John is really interesting guy to talk to, really honest, I think. Like, and I don't think, like, when we talked to him at the trade deadline, he, and even after, like, I think he, understood that it made sense for him to go to another place. But I think like that first Atlanta to Utah trade, like, did shake him up emotionally in a real way. And so, like, I don't think that he loves the idea of being like a journeyman power forward on, just a mercenary power forward, right? For whoever kind of needs his skill set. I think he would like to find a home and was kind of like hoping that would be Utah, right? Like, and this would all kind of coalesce. And I think now, he sees the writing on the wall. Like, it just makes more sense if the team goes a different direction. That's why they weren't playing him, right? But despite him being healthy, but I don't think like necessarily he would like shout in joy about a trade out of Utah. I think you're muted. Sorry.
Weird. Okay, am I back?
Yeah.
Oh, and love to is probably a strong way to put it, but I think you're right. I think like getting to a place where he can just play and win, and obviously try to earn another contract is something I think he'd be fine with. And that's where I'm kind of thinking this is probably where the Jazz are going to go. And I do think they're trying to find spots for these veteran players so that they can go into this season and play to win games, but with the player they draft in this draft, with the young players they've already drafted. Is that kind of what you think they're leaning towards, or are they just going to play everyone who's on the team and try to win? And
I agree. I think that's most likely. I think it depends if they can find spots for John and Jordan and Colin, right? Like, I think Jordan Clarkson's frankly just going to be a hard one to find a spot for, right? Like, he at this point is a negative contract. There's not any interest just because of the production over the last couple of seasons, which is fine enough in points, but everyone wants efficiency now. And I think rightfully so, because Colin and Jordan, I think you can. It's just like, where does the salary slots line up and what players do you get back? And does that hurt the Jazz long-term more than just letting their contracts expire, right? So I think that's an interesting twist and something to watch for. And it's kind of always been the problem with trading those guys. I do though think like finding that should be possible. And then that is kind of the most likely option, but I don't think that they've ruled out going and getting a star and trying to like, start the move up if they got a good deal on whoever that player is. And that player could be a fit, not just like in 2025, but in 2028 as well, right? Like, so you're trying to get a younger star who is not going to be past their prime by then.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that's something I actually thought about a little bit lately, because the line that got tons of headlines a few seasons ago was the big game hunting thing. Right. And I kind of feel like, why is that something that we only consider like going and getting Giannis, if you can go get Giannis, or go and get the latest star that might be gettable? Why don't the Jazz look at that right now? If they think Dylan Harper or someone like that at number 2, like I would be much more happy if the Jazz gave I was like, did I get muted? I would be much more happy if the Jazz gave a crazy, interesting offer to go get Dylan Harper, who you would have under contract for 7 years. If you think he's going to be a star, why wouldn't you want to do that rather than go out and get Giannis, who's in his early 30s?
Yeah, I think they would like to do that. I just don't think that San Antonio would like to do that, right?
You think so?
From San Antonio's point of view, like the Lauri Markkanen plus draft picks package for number 2, I don't think is as interesting as getting Giannis for them and just, taking advantage of Wemby while you still have him, right? While you still have him and while he's healthy, right? Like, you are a little bit worried about Wemby at 7'4", 7'5", health issues, etc. Like, now is probably the time to press the button on that, right? So I think absolutely the Jazz would love to go get Dylan Harper. They would, and I think they would give up a lot to get him. I just think that they can probably be, if San Antonio decides to go all in. I don't think that Lauri Markkanen and picks is going to be the offer that makes sense for them.
Yeah, I guess I was going to ask about Lauri Markkanen later, but maybe now since we've talked about him, I'll just ask, like, how likely is Lauri Markkanen going? Like, what was it, 50-50 he's on the Jazz next season? What would you say?
I think probably a little higher than that. Look, I think if you do decide to go the non-veterans path, and just, you're playing your hardest, but you're not very good, and so your thought is you'll win 25 games and still keep the OKC pick.
Yeah.
I think you can probably afford to keep Lauri. I think probably more at play here is that because there are a lot of stars in the market, and because Lauri had a kind of down season last year, I don't think, and because it's a brand new contract, I don't think this is the peak of his trade value. And I basically believe that, like, Lauri's bad season last year was because he was trying new random stuff with his game, and, like, I don't think any of it worked, but, like, he was trying to do more isolation stuff on the elbow, and he was trying to just take more shots on the move, and like, frankly, just didn't have any real threats around him to open up space, right? So I'm basically a believer that Lauri Markkanen will be the near all-star player that he was the first 2 seasons in a Jazz uniform, but for the league, like, they have to worry about that he won't come back. And then if he's just the player that he was last year, then yeah, he's not really a positive contract, right? So to me, it doesn't feel like the time, even if it makes sense, like if you to just tank and rebuild and go without any veterans. Lauri's tough because I do think you can just get way, way, way better value later on, hopefully, if what I believe about his game is true.
Yeah, and I guess it's a win-win. I mean, if he plays really well, then you could, and you want to trade him, you could at trade deadline. Then he probably has pretty good value. If he's not good, then you're probably doing pretty well towards getting your number 8 pick and keeping it, I guess. And so,
yeah.
Okay, I want to ask you about the draft. You mentioned a Philadelphia possibility, which I guess I don't really see that as being that surprising. I think Philadelphia is the one that everyone out there is talking about. I mean, and maybe I'm wrong, but I think Daryl Morey is one of those guys that calls everyone a lot, and to the point of being almost maybe a little obnoxious. So I don't think that's surprising, but how much would Philadelphia be interested in being able to get off the Paul George contract, in your opinion, to maybe move back with the Jazz? Like, if the Jazz said, we would take it if we can move up, I don't know. What do you think about that?
Yeah, look, I think it is something that they would be interested in. I think they would be interested in. I think, like, because he has such a big contract, right? Like, you have to trade good players back in return. So you can't just dump the Paul George contract. You also have to take on. They would have to then get Colin Sexton and John Collins, or Lauri Markkanen, who, like, has value in his own right. I think John and Colin have some value in their own right. Like, let's call it a first round pick or two, like, and so to give all that up plus the number 5 pick for just the chance to move up 2 slots and take on Paul George's contract, to me, is like someone who thinks about the Jazz, like, I don't think that's close. And I don't think that the Jazz think that's close, right? Like, because that's just too much to give up value-wise, and too much long-term trouble for a jump between number 5 and number 3, where I think consensus says you're not getting a different tier of player between number 3 and number 5. Now, obviously, the Jazz have preferences and who their guy is, but it just feels like a lot to bet on, given how uncertain the NBA draft can be. So, yeah, I think that's my view. And from my understanding, like, this deal has not, like, gotten close. Like, this is something I've heard a few weeks ago, and, like, just as, like, an offer that was made, not like and discussions are ongoing, right? Like, it's early enough that all the real movement is still to happen, right? Like, we're still a week away from the draft, but I don't anticipate that's what happens.
Yeah, and I don't know what you can even talk about in terms of the offer, but I do think there's a world where, I mean, because someone hears Colin Sexton and John Collins for Paul George and they think, but then when you consider the fact that they'll be on expiring deals, that is a get out of jail free card for the Sixers, who Paul George did not have a very good season, and it's not very likely that he's getting better next year.
He's 35 and put up a 14 PER last year.
Yeah, it was not good, and he has what, 2-3 years left?
Yeah, 3 years left at $50 million a year. More, actually, it's escalating. So, like, yeah, like, you know, if I have familiarity with any math at all, and frankly, any, like, thought of how Danny Ainge has operated, Danny Ainge has never been the, hey, I'm going to, you know, sign up for the 35-year-old and see what we're going to build, right? Like, Danny Ainge trades those guys to start rebuilds. I mean, I guess he went and got Kevin Garnett and Ray Allen the first time, and then, but that was a good close team that had a lot of other things going for it, right? Like, I don't think he thinks that the Jazz are you know, 1 or 2 moves away like that from winning an NBA title, and nor do I think 35-year-old Paul George is 35-year-old Kevin Garnett. Frankly, I think Kevin Garnett was at a much higher level when the Boston Celtics traded for him. So, yeah, I mean, it just doesn't make sense from my point of view, and it doesn't make sense from anything I know about how Denny and Justin think. Now, you know, I don't know how different Austin Ainge is, but how NBA talent evaluators think, they care about age and they care about contracts a lot. You know, like it just doesn't make sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I guess the reason they would do that is to trade up to number 3, and maybe we can get into the draft now a little bit. Like, let's say the Jazz go to number 3. Who would you pick? I think I know who I would, but I want to hear who you would, because Cooper Flagg and Dylan Harper are going 1 and 2.
Yeah.
Who would you take at number 3 if they did that?
I would take VJ Edgecombe. And I've done more work on this draft than I have previous ones, frankly, because I was a little bit embarrassed by liking Cody Williams as much as I did the last year. And then all of a sudden I was like, oh no, this is my vibes-based approach is bad. So I went back to my basics. And actually, so like, you know this, I was a math major, and my thesis was, and this is typical Andy, is predicting which college basketball players would be good NBA players using machine learning techniques. So this was, I was like, I had a professor who was really into machine learning and kind of showed me all this stuff, and we worked on this thesis together, and it was really fun, and like learned, you know, about statistical modeling and how to do this. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to go back to my roots and try this approach again, but like with 2025 machine learning rather than 2011 machine learning. And VJ Edgecombe, like all my models love VJ Edgecombe, like as almost as good of a prospect as Cooper and Dylan. And I think, you know, and then I talked to him at the combine, right? Like, and you hear his quotes, and he just like has an understanding of what he needs to do to be helpful at the NBA level. So to give you an idea, like I projected off of their peak EPM. So I wasn't going for like longevity. I wasn't going for points per game. I was going for estimated plus minus. So trying to take into account both offense and defense and how much of an impact you have on the plus minus and all of that, right? Like, and I think VJ Edgecombe has a good chance to be a very good plus defender, and then like can expand his game offensively with the athleticism over the course of his career. You know, like I like the Victor Oladipo comp. I think that makes sense. He does remind me of like how I felt about Donovan a little bit, in that Donovan also wanted to be a defense first guy, believe it or not, before he became an NBA player, and then, you know, kind of lit the world on fire. But like when I talked to Donovan, like he just, as going into the NBA draft, like he was so focused on just helping his team. And I feel a lot about that. See a lot of that in VJ Edgecombe that I didn't see in Ace Bailey or Jeremiah Fears, for example. Trey Johnson's a little bit kind of in the middle there. I do think Con Knippel was kind of on the side of helping the team however needs to be. But yeah, like it's interesting to kind of talk to those guys and learn about what they're good at, and then look at the models too and see what makes sense. That's a long answer to say VJ Edgecombe.
No, and you know what? I think I agree, because I I was talking to some of the SLC Dunk guys, and I was like, what is the got that dog in him stat? Like, like, how do you find that? And it's really stocks. It's the steals and blocks combination. And it is like, I mean, everyone will tell you steals and things like that are a very good indicator. Like when you look at VJ Edgecombe and you compare his steals to Cooper Flagg, who's considered this all-world defender, I mean, it's 2.3 steals for VJ versus Cooper Flagg at 1.6. You look at blocks, 1.6 for Cooper, and then you look, and well, VJ's on the perimeter more, but 0.7. But for his position, actually, by the way, guys, the site that needs a little more pub, it already gets a lot, is Tankathon. If you do the compare prospects thing, it's awesome. But anyways, I think VJ could be amazing, and I actually do think, like, let's say, maybe you agree. Go get Paul George, give Philadelphia the 5. You can just let him not play and you just trade him until once you find a suitor. I don't know if the Jazz would be willing to do that. But then you get VJ, and I think the biggest problem for Utah is not necessarily the offense, it's the defense. The last 2 seasons, the Jazz have had the number 30 defense. Right. And you need to start drafting guys that can play both sides of the floor. I don't know. What do you think?
I think the coaching staff certainly feels that, right? Like, as much, I do think some of the coaching decisions pump offense and lower defense, right? Like, so the big one is offensive rebound crashing, right? Like, nobody crashes the boards as hard as Will Hardy teams, and so you get offense rebounds, and your O rating goes up and your defensive rating goes down, right? Like, that's and he sends multiple guys in order to make that happen, which means you get killed in transition.
By the way, speaking of that, VJ Edgecombe 6.2 rebounds. Trey Johnson, 3.2. It's right. He has got that dog in him, is what he's got.
And I think Jazz fans, Jazz management, Jazz coaching, I think everyone agrees that the Jazz have a lack of dog in them. Like, yes. And the prospects that they have are missing significant dog. And this is a conversation like Sarah Todd and Ryan Miller and we have in the post game a lot, is like, which Jazz players have dog? And that's what we say. That's what we call it. And our dog is, do they have that dog in them?
We're a little more Chihuahua than we are Rottweiler, I would say.
The answer is Colin Sexton definitely has dog.
Yes.
And then, Keontae's got offense dog, right? Like, but has 0 defense dog. Maybe I haven't seen. I think Walker has defense dog, but not offense dog, the defense dog, frankly, comes and goes with Walker a little bit. Like, I don't know who else on the roster qualifies as being like a tough nosed guy who's going to give everything they have for 48 minutes. Like we've seen in the NBA finals. Like if there's a differentiator between the 2 teams in the NBA finals and those that aren't, it's having that dog in them. And I just think that the Jazz are extremely far away from that. And I think that's something that, Austin Ainge even talked about in the press conference, is wanting more of those guys. I like Trey Johnson as a prospect. I like Conkinipple. I like even Ace Bailey as, like, maybe not my guy, but as someone who I think can be a good NBA player. But of the players in that realm, I just think that VJ clearly has the highest dog.
The highest dog. Well, and it's, we're joking, but it's true though. I was so disappointed. No one was a bigger Keontae fan than me, and I had watched film of him at Baylor do some things, and I thought, this guy, if he's shown he can, and I don't understand why you're not. Like, why at a certain point
defense
with defense, like offensive, like, so there's just some, and maybe I'm just like seeing what I want to see, but like, it's just not there. I just haven't. I don't know why.
I do think he turned it up at the second half of the year from like a 1 to a 3, right? And he still was getting killed a lot. But like, I do think benching him got through to him a little bit, but then he stopped passing, which is not what you want either. He said in a press conference last year, Will Hardy is the first coach ever to get on him defensively.
Yeah, which is crazy.
And like, yeah, and I understand how that happens because his whole life he's been a top AAU recruit, and like, coaches get scared about being too hard on those guys, or else they go to
they go to another team.
Yeah. And I think that's happened with Keontae a little bit. I think I wish I saw Isaiah Collier care about the defense end more. I think he tries, but is not an impact player.
Yeah.
I think Taylor Hendricks has the potential to be, but if he has a weakness, it's that he's not fighting for those rebounds and he's not fighting for those steals and blocks, right? Like, he can be a solid on-ball guy, but it's not a team construct for him yet. Cody does not have dog. It's just Kyle. Kyle does not have dog, right? Like, and maybe they grow into it, right? Like, maybe it's just a body thing, and maybe they will wait until they have the strength needed to make the plays in order to become more aggressive. Maybe that's how it unfolds. But at this point, like, they are not making an impact in the moments that win and lose games, and the Jazz lost the most games.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess, and I think it takes two to make a trade. So I don't know if Philly's going to do a trade unless. And I guess one of the things that is so interesting is Daryl Morey versus Danny Ainge or Austin Ainge. Are they even willing to make a trade happen between those two? Maybe.
I think so.
Maybe. You think so? I don't think they have, because we always hear about the rivalry, like Pat Riley and Danny Ainge. I don't know if they care that much. Maybe they do. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think who else, like Elton Brand's in that front office is, I think that there's got to be connections between. Yeah, I'm not that worried about the personalities involved there, right? Like, would be more in like a Miami Heat situation where it is Danny Ainge and Pat Riley, and there is long-standing and like very public beef between the two. But even then, you have Austin Ainge and you have Justin Zanik, and you have, again, kind of the GMs and assistants below them on the other teams. Like, in the end, like, the Knicks and Raptors made a trade even though they are suing each other, right? Like,
yeah,
I think everyone kind of recognizes, hey, there are only 29 other NBA teams out there. There aren't that many other opportunities. If it's what's best for your franchise, you have to put whatever else aside and do the right thing.
Okay, so I do these rumor articles every day, not from Evan Sidery, not from Legion Hoops, but from like actual guys. And the pick that sounds like it's the most available outside of maybe Philly, it sounds like Philly is willing to make a trade if you're willing to talk. But the other one that has been reported is, I think it's from Jake Fisher, is the number 9, the Toronto pick. Mm-hmm. Is that something that you think? I think if they could, the Jazz should move up. I don't know if there's a guy they love in the late, at 9. I don't know. What do you think about that?
I have no insider information on this, so totally speculation. I have not heard any like Jazz going for number 9 things. So maybe it happens, but I haven't heard about it. My thought is, I don't know that I love who's going to be available at number 9 if it goes as planned. I mean, I truly just don't know a lot about like Noah Senge as a prospect, right? Mm-hmm. Or I guess Derek Queen could be around there, and I like him okay, but it's a gamble, right? And so one of the trades that's been mentioned around the number 9 pick in the reporting, again, not that I know of, but just I've read on the internet like everyone else, is the Jakob Poeltl and number 9 for Kevin Durant. And so Kevin Durant is different than whatever the Jazz can give. So I don't think, to me, I don't know that I see the logical fit there, but the Raptors front office has done some weird stuff over the last couple of years, right? So maybe.
Yeah, I was gonna say there's a got that dog in him guy. It's Colin Murray Boyles. He's that kind of comp to Draymond a little bit.
Yeah,
he would be fun, but
I like Colin Murray Boyles. Yeah, that would honestly probably be who I would take at number 9, presuming.
Is that? Have you run your stuff on him at all?
Yeah, he's 10th actually. You want to hear the list and the current model, which I think I'm going to put online in the next couple of days?
Sure, let's hear it.
So we got Cooper Flag 1. Asa Newell is number 2, which is crazy. But he has some pretty phenomenal stats. And then I think...
Well, he played at Montverde with Cooper Flag. He was a highly touted prospect.
Yeah, and so I think that is part of it, is like the RSCA is high and it cares a lot about like how high school players were considered. So my model does, and then like the efficiency is good. The big worry with him is defense, and is he a 4 or 5 tweener? And I think that's a real concern. As I kind of look back at how it would have predicted past drafts, like it also thought highly of Marvin Bagley, for example, who I think has similar problems. But anyway, like that's what the model says, and so we're okay with it. VJ Edgecombe 3, Trey Johnson 4, Malawak 5, Concanipple 6, Dylan Harper 7, so all the way down there, but that's kind of interesting. Derek Queen 8, Ace Bailey 9, Colin Murray Boyles 10.
That's interesting.
Which, like, honestly, for a draft model, I'm pretty proud of, to get like,
yeah, that's pretty good
for on a stats only model. And I guess, you know, it takes into account height and, like I said, high school rank. But yeah, like I'm happy with that.
That's well, and you mentioned that's the other guy that I'm kind of curious about. I that you mentioned, he's at 5, I think, Common Malawach.
Yeah.
I really like him. I don't know if the Jazz would take him at 5, maybe, but then that
for a workout today.
That's what I was going to say. They brought him in, and this is not something I want to write, and I need to just do some work besides just rumors for clicks, I guess. But like, I do think there's an archetype in the NBA that you kind of need to win a title, and to me, it's that player that protects the rim on one end, but then also spreads the floor on the other. And you look at like the Indiana Pacers with Miles Turner, the Thunder have that in Chet if they want to. You look at like the Boston Celtics when they won it last year with Porzingis kind of doing that same thing. I do wonder if that's kind of an archetype that the Jazz might want to look at. I know they every report is that they really like Walker Kessler, and if you take a Common Malawach, then if I'm Walker Kessler, I'm like, well, what's going on here? What do you think? Is that something they think about or care about?
I don't think you can draft him unless you have a good landing place for Walker, right? Like otherwise you are just, you know, doubling down on centers when you have too many centers, right? Like and to me, like the skill set feels a little bit high at number 5, but I do think you're right. Like I don't know that I buy, you know, so he's a significantly less good rim protector than Walker, right? Like he actually did a lot of his defending at the level of the screen rather than playing in drop, and does not have the drop stats that Walker had, that Rudy Gobert had, that, you know, like the best rim protectors Chet Holmgren had. Like he's not that good in rim protection, despite kind of seeming like he should be. But I do think he's much more mobile than those guys, and that's kind of hope, is you can kind of keep him out on the perimeter, maybe do more switching, maybe do more again at the level kind of stuff. The offensive game I think is further along than maybe those guys were also in college, but also I think is, from my point of view, still pretty raw on the offense. Like I think about, you know, again, how good Chet is, how good like Al Horford was, how good Kristaps is. I don't think Malawach is there, and so like I struggle to find like the offensive comp that makes sense for him to get to that NBA Finals game-changing player. But I don't think it's crazy. I think just in that case, yeah, you just have to figure out what you're doing with Walker.
That's why I'm saying if he's at like 9, which is probably not going to happen, I think there's a bunch of teams that think this guy is. I mean, the thing is he's 7'2", he's enormous. If you're talking about Wembanyama as the guy that's going to win titles, that's kind of why you drafted Ostertag. If you have a guy that can compete, although you don't want to draft him just to guard Wemby. Yeah. It did it, but he was a late first round. But if you love him and he's there at 9, and it sounds like the Raptors want a center, I don't know if the Jazz would trade Kessler to get to 9 and take Malawach and then maybe try to get something else from Toronto, but that's just a thought. Like, is that something?
And they have Pirtle, you know, like what are they doing with Pirtle in that case?
Yeah, I can't remember. I think it.
Unless they're trading him for Kevin Durant, and then all of a sudden now you've got Kevin Durant. You've got, I mean, it's a weird team, but you've got quickly RJ Barrett. I can't believe we're talking Toronto Raptors.
I know, sorry.
Quickly RJ Barrett, Kevin Durant, Walker Kessler, Ochai Agbaji, Kelly Olynyk. I'm really stretching.
Hey.
Scott Barnes, obviously.
Hey, this helps me. I don't care about them. This helps me.
It's a weird team, but it's a team.
It is, and I don't know. It's the Eastern Conference, and it's a little more open. And the one, you mentioned kind of, and I saw a rumor on Silver Screen and Roll about Kessler, and then I saw you mentioned about kind of Kessler and that the Lakers have, I have an interest in a lot of things. It doesn't mean those things are going to happen. And I don't think the Jazz are going to trade Walker Kessler to the Lakers because they have the Lakers 27 pick. But maybe, I mean, what do you think? Do the Jazz care about that enough? Because it will make Luka better.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is at play. I think basically, they know that the Luka trade hurt the 27 pick a lot, right? Like, there's no question about it. Assuming he stays in LA, which hasn't been formally decided yet, but kind of everyone thinks that that's most likely. I don't think Walker is untouchable. I think they like him a lot. I think the stats are great. I do think that they have some of the same one-dimensional fears that the Jazz ended up having with Rudy Gobert a little bit. But ultimately, they also know that he's a very good player who's on his way up, who works hard, who does all the right things that the coach likes, all that good stuff, right? And frankly, is the kind of only good young thing you have that's really worth a lot of value. In the end, are the Lakers picks down the road worth trading, with those two swipes at it, plus, let's say, Dalton Connect? Are you going to get a player that's as good as Walker Kessler is? I don't know that you are. And so that's the concern. I would say it wouldn't stun me if Walker's traded instead of extended, but I think extension probably makes more sense. And then if you are going to trade him, I think more likely is another team that has more interesting young players or more interesting draft picks to trade.
And I mean, before you go, have you heard number-wise what that might be if they do re-sign Walker Kessler?
No, not from the front office. And the conversations. I think the rule is that they can't extend him yet, right? They have to wait until
I would wait anyway. I don't think I would be in a rush to give him a contract, but I don't know exactly. So maybe it's a bad question, but I mean, because we talk about it internally a lot in our team. Are they going to give Walker Kessler 20 to 30 million? And it scares me, and I
think that's fine. Let's say I think he's a 5-win player, and that's what those guys are worth in an expanding salary cap. I think to me, the worry is if you get to 35, 40, then all of a sudden, okay, I'm maybe less cool with it. But, and maybe you just let the market determine it to some degree, given that everyone doesn't have cap space. But he does a really valuable thing. He's pretty young, and got a lot better last year. He should at least get Isaiah Hartenstein money in my mind.
Okay. Well, that hurts my heart a little bit. But he's a good player. He does protect the rim. I don't know. All right, last question. Utah's
I'm famously very pro Walker Kessler, right?
And I'm not anti Walker Kessler. I'm just I guess I just struggle with rim protecting centers that that's what they do. And I know and that's kind of been our life for the last 10 years. And Rudy Gobert was incredible and just so good at what he did. But then also you couldn't throw him the ball in the post, and that just makes it hard. And I don't know. But anyways, last question. So let's say the draft goes Cooper 1, Dylan 2, VJ 3, and there's a surprise. Con Knipple goes 4 to Charlotte.
Which I think is the ESPN mock right now.
I think so. And, it's kind of been going the rounds lately on other places too. So Utah is on the board at that point. I guess 2 questions. Who would you take, and who do you think the Jazz will take?
I think it might be the same answer. I think it's either Trey Johnson or Con Knipple, and I think I'd probably just go with I don't know. I probably Trey Johnson. I think the scoring upside is real. I think he's a smart player. I think he passes better than he gets credit for. you worry about taking another good shooter guy who's not a great defender. But I think like he has more offensive juice than any of the Jazz's current young players do. Which makes sense because he's a top 5 pick and not, or presumably, and not 9th or 16th or 28th or whatever, right? So, I think you're getting something more real offensively than you've had previously with young guys. So, I do think hard about Concaniple. Like I think he establishes a culture in a real way that Trey will not, or at least works towards building a culture. But ultimately, I think that also is set by whoever your best player is a little bit, or who your best players are. I actually do believe in Concaniple as a really helpful future starter. But the kind of player a good team should add. But I get the Trey Johnson thought too, and the model likes him well enough too. So I think Trey Johnson. I've been waffling on that in my head over the last weeks. Ace Bailey is a real consideration there too. I think like, hey, I don't know that my model's wrong. Like, I don't know that the head case stuff is as big as people say. Like, I think you can talk yourself out of good players, but ultimately, I think to me, it's between those two guys, and I would probably choose Trey.
I think I probably agree. I think it's hard to pass up on Ace, but I think Trey. The question is the dog percentage. Is he 30% dog, 60% dog? I don't know.
Yeah. And, I think that's a question. Like, to me, his, like, mid-tier to bottom-tier case is kind of Buddy Hield-y, in which, like, can score a lot, can be a really effective part of an offense, and yet, like, the Pacers kind of did get better once they traded Buddy Hield, and so, like, there is some concern there, but then I don't know that the other players are so compelling that you pass it up, right? Like, so would you rather have – you'd probably rather have – okay, yeah, who would you rather have, Buddy Hield or Michael Porter Jr.?
That's a good question.
I don't know.
It really comes down to contract, to be honest.
Yeah, right.
So
in a world where Buddy Hield's making the max like MPJ is, obviously you hate that. Like, and then also, Ace Bailey's now 3 inches shorter than.
Yeah. He is not as big, and I tell you what, you look at the stats, and it is, that's why I'm okay letting the Jazz make the choice, because that's a stressful one, especially with Ace Bailey on the board. My gosh.
Yeah.
Well, Andy, thank you so much, guys. Make sure you go to the Tribune and get what's it called, a membership or
subscription.
Subscription. Go get a subscription. Andy does amazing work. Are you doing the triple team this year?
Yeah, that's the plan anyway. I think when we'll do it for Summer League 2, I think is the plan. I actually need to talk to my boss about that, but
okay.
we'll figure it out. Like, we're doing one thing at a time, right? Like,
I know.
You're trying to get me little games ahead, and I know I've heard from Will Hardy too many times. We got to focus on just this game.
Just this game. That's right. Well, thank you so much, Andy. That was a lot of fun, and draft is in a week. We'll see who the Jazz draft. Thanks again.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me.